welcome to Word on Wearside Series 3. My name is Nisha.
My name's Katy.
And on today's episode, we are going to be discussing queer representation in the media. To do this, we're going to be looking at the history of queer representation and the effects it's had on those in the community.
We're going to be checking in with members of the LGBT community and hearing their thoughts and opinions about this topic. Representation is important as it helps people feel less alone by letting them know that there is a community of others like them.
Unfortunately, the history behind queer representation in the media is a short one.
Historically, LGBT characters have often been stereotypical or have received cruel fates.
The Hays Code was introduced into US law in 1934, which prohibited the showing of LGBT characters.
It wasn't until 1968 when this was lifted, but that still left queer characters being stereotypical, often perceived as the bad guy.
It was shortly after this, in 1975, where we saw the release of the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
So, come up to the lab and see what's on the slab. I see you shiver with anticipation.
The musical had an array of queer characters and it painted them in a positive light. Unfortunately, however, the 80s brought the AIDS crisis, which worsened the stigma towards the LGBT community, most specifically gay men.
A mystery disease known as the gay plague has become an epidemic unprecedented in the history of American medicine.
In 1988, Margaret Thatcher introduced the law that bans the promotion of teaching of acceptability of homosexuality under Section 28.
Children who need to be taught to respect traditional moral values are being taught that they have an inalienable right to be gay.
And this was only lifted in 2003, which is crazy.
Literally the year before I was born, but this just proves how important representation in movies and TV were, because they were the only kind of exposure that the LGBT community was getting at that time.
In 1989, the first gay kiss on UK television was shown on EastEnders, and this caused a whole load of homophobic backlash from the public.
And now God's finally got fed up. And he sent this dreadful plague down on you all, and you still won't learn, will you?
Hang on, are you trying to tell me that AIDS is God's punishment for being gay?
Well, of course it is. What else could it be?
In 1999, Queer as Folk premiered in the UK, and the show followed a group of out gay men, and it presented the LGBT community as vibrant and happy and alive. Nowadays, we are thankful to see various examples of LGBT characters living happy, healthy lives and having happy, healthy relationships that don't always end in a tragic fate. I caught up with creative person Chev, and this is what they had to say about the topic.
And I caught up with James, a member of the LGBT Society at the University of Sunderland, to see what he thinks about queerness in the media.
Hey, my name's Chev. I use they them pronouns, and I'm a creative sort of person from and based in Newcastle upon Tyne. Creative things span from sort of writing and performing comedy, often in a clownish sort of way, but also zine and badge making and designing, and doing technical things in theatre.
Me and a group of friends, we've refounded the LGBT Society at the university. Apparently it was a bit chaotic last time and it kind of fell apart, but we've refounded it and we believe it's going to go on to be a good way for queer people at the uni to get together, talk to each other, meet people who have maybe got the same anxiety as they have, the same sort of struggles, and I think that's going to be a really good thing. I think the LGBT Society is going to be a force for good at the university.
You know, queer people and, you know, like any marginalised group, like we're all still part of society, which is what the stories that we're telling in the media are about. So yeah, it's just kind of, you know, we want to be representing everyone in some way.
Even in the year of our Lord, 2024, there are still quite a few bigoted people, I don't know if you've noticed. So I think representation of queerness in media is a big way to fight against that sort of thing. Like, if you normalise something, you get people seeing it, like even shows for like kids, stuff like that. I think getting it into people's heads that this thing is completely normal from a, you know, just getting people exposed to it, I guess, so that they're not like, oh, what's this? I haven't heard of this. This new thing is strange to me. So that's why it's important. There should definitely be more.
The way that I see it as well is that we're always going to be telling our stories, but the ones that get more funding, more, you know, screen time, airtime, shouted about more are generally those that are larger productions, and those, you know, will be seen and and heard by more people. But often those are the ones that, because the people higher up aren't from queer communities, aren't the ones that are platforming those stories, which is a massive shame and not good, because it means that we're not getting as much of a chance to tell our stories in a big kind of extravagant way compared to people who aren't. And because those are the ones that will be seen and heard by more people, and therefore both people who, you know, are from those communities, but, you know, who might not, you know themselves as much, you know, won't have as much of a chance to see it if it's not in the mainstream. But also it's really important for people in the mainstream who aren't from those communities to be able to see and hear, you know, queer stories, so that, you know, they can understand us better and hopefully be more accepting and realise that we're not threatening.
Like I said, there are still people who are afraid. I think that homophobia is inherently entrenched in a fear of gay people, and fear of gay people is entrenched in seeing them as an unknown. So just like normalising them, yeah. So I think that's why it's important.
I don't think you can homogenise queer experience into like, aha, this is the queer experience, because like even within the queer community, all of our experiences are different. Some that I think have been very impactful on me kind of recently. Elliot Page's film, I think it's called Close to You, was really sweet and really good, and I just loved how like understated it was, and you can tell that it's like drawing on his experiences. Mae Martin in Feel Good, I think, was really lovely as well, but again, especially because I think it was kind of made and represented them like before they understood they were non-binary, and then kind of over the course of the two series they're like starting to question it, which is quite accurate, I think, especially if people of slightly older generations. I think there can be accurate representations, but not an accurate, like a singular accurate representation.
The album Love It by Nana Grizzle, it's about, I guess it's about unrequited love from like a gay perspective. And for me personally, I would say that is the most accurate piece of media I've consumed about queer relationships.
I think a lot of things that resonate with me are stuff that are like queer coded rather than explicitly queer. My friend and I have a zine that we make called Trans Mask Vibes, which is basically like aspirational like trans mask representation, and there's like, you know, characters in that like Arthur Christmas, R2D2, like Gromit from Wallace and Gromit, that were all just like, we can't explain it, it's just a vibe. I think a big one for me is probably Doctor Who, and I've always like massively like had a big affinity with the Doctor as a character for many different reasons, but I think, and especially kind of more recently, like kind of being that alien person who, you know, doesn't necessarily conform to like an understanding of male and female in human terms was a lot to me, and also someone who I've always read as like quite asexual, like ace-coded. And like another one for that is a really niche one of like John Finnemore's Souvenir Programme season 9, which is one that they made in lockdown, and that has really like, again, like really sweet understated queer representation, and like one of the characters, like it's one of the first kind of explorations in kind of relatively mainstream media, because it's like on the BBC, of like asexual representation of a character who just like doesn't want to have sex, and, you know, it's not his thing, but, you know, it's not a big deal. And yeah, that was really lovely, especially as someone who, like, I've really loved his work for a while.
Good Omens on Amazon Prime. It was introduced to me by an old friend from sixth form, and I don't know, it's not a particularly happy show. It's not explicitly queer even in the first season, but the second season is, and it means a lot to me. Good Omens, I would say. I've always had like a weird issue about like watching like queer media. I don't know what it is or why. I always just feel weird about it. So Good Omens was like the first show where I just like queer show where I sat down and like just watched it. I guess that would be like why it means a lot, because it was like the first one that I genuinely gave it a chance and wasn't like put off by it, I guess.
We're gonna give our 2 cents, talk about our favourite queer characters in the media. And I'm going to start off. I think Todd Chavez in BoJack Horseman is great representation. Todd comes out as asexual, and he was actually the only asexual character in TV up until I think 2018, which is insane.
That's amazing. Sometimes I wish I was asexual. Maybe then I wouldn't have a strain of herpes.
You have multiple
I know I have
strains.
multiple strains, but the joke only works with the A.
It actually feels nice to finally say it out loud. I am an asexual person. I am asexual.
That's great.
But yeah, I really like BoJack Horseman, and I think Todd's coming out was dealt with very sensitively and very well. They didn't make it a huge part of his personality, but they still touched on it, which I think worked really well.
One of my personal favourites is Eric from Sex Education. He's a gay black man, and he's presented as flamboyant and camp Throughout the show, it touches on how his race is affected, his bisexuality, and his religion.
My name is Eric Effiong, and I'm a Christian and a proud gay man.
So throughout the show, he's like really uncomfortable about going to the black church and how he's gonna be like perceived when he goes there. And I just thought that was a really good take on that side of the community.
Building on that, I love Captain Holt from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. In the first episode, his sexuality is touched on. He's been out for a very long time in the show, and his sexuality isn't made a big deal.
Motorcycles are death machines. I have 3 kids. I'm not risking it. Are you saying my life matters less because I don't conform to society's heteronormative, child-centric ideals? Are you really playing the gay card right now? God's queen.
He's also a gay black man, and being captain of a precinct, he's very proud of his sexuality, and I think that is really nice to see.
Now back to the Rocky Horror Picture Show. This is one of my absolute favourite characters of all time, and it's Frankenfurter. He's one of the first pansexual characters. Not only is he pansexual, he questions the gender roles. So he dresses in like corsets. He's basically next to nothing, to be fair.
Then hitting a bit close to home for me is Claire from Dairy Girls. I love Dairy Girls as a show. And then Claire, when she came out as they say, the wee lesbian, it was just hilarious. Friends didn't believe her at first. They were like, there's no way. And they also came with her at, well, do you like me? Which is a very common queer experience.
I'm the wee lesbian.
So you are, Claire.
I'm not joking.
You're a lesbian.
I've never been brave enough to say it out loud before, but I think that's why I wrote this story, and then it all got too real. I got too scared, but now, well, you made me realise it's all okay.
Don't blame me.
What?
You fancy gears?
Well, that's sort of an entry-level requirement, Erin.
I think I'm gonna boke.
Do you mind? I'm trying to come out here.
Well, don't come out. Go back in.
I don't want to go back in.
Well, I'm sorry, Claire, but I'm just not interested in you, not like that.
I'm not interested in you like that look of this stadia.
I just think it's hilarious. The show is hilarious, and they don't make it a part of her personality either. She has other storylines, and they touch on other storylines, which I think is so important when having a queer character.
Kurt from Glee is a really good example of the LGBT community, as he is at the beginning the only gay character in the show.
I'm gay.
I know.
Really?
I've known since you were 3. All you wanted for your birthday was a pair of sensible heels.
And he's very heavily bullied for that, to the point where he has to move schools.
And last but not least, I'm going to talk about a bit of an older one, is the 1999 queer classic, But I'm a Cheerleader. Natasha Lyonne plays Megan, and the movie is absolutely hilarious. If you haven't seen it, I'd 100% recommend. It's basically a complete dramatization of gender roles, how girls are in pink, boys are in blue, and basically Megan in the movie is a lesbian, and she gets sent to conversion therapy, and it just shows how absurd something like that is in a really funny way.
I'm a homosexual.
Congratulations, Megan. You have just taken your first step in your true direction.
Really upsetting when you think about it, but it is a really good movie that I would 100% recommend everyone watch.
This isn't a character, but it's probably a very good one to mention, which is It's a Sin, which was aired on Channel 4 in 2021, and it presents the 1980s AIDS crisis and stigma gay men received from that. They received a lot of negativity, people wouldn't go near them, people wouldn't touch them.
But do you want to know the truth? Do you know what it really is, AIDS? It's a racket. It's a money-making scheme for drugs companies. Do you seriously think there's an illness that only gay men? It can calculate that you're gay and you, but no one else. What about bisexuals? Do they only get sick every other day?
The storyline, basically, it's a bunch of gay men and queer people who move from home to London, and it shows their experience of this, like they go to protests. The show doesn't only explore that group of friends, it touches on like the older gay men of the time and how it's affected them. I think one of the characters lost the husband to it. It's just really emotional and delves deep into how they were feeling at the time. That's a wrap.
Thank you for joining us in our investigation into queerness in the media.
You can check out other episodes of Word on Wearside on sparksunderland.com.